Welcome. With this video, I'd like to provide a brief overview of Oracle Live SQL. This is a free online environment to support learning of SQL and PL SQL. In this environment, you can create tables. You can write and execute SQL statements that interact with these tables. You can write and execute PL SQL code. You can create program objects like stored procedures and database triggers. So it provides a great deal of capability for you, and there's no charge. Furthermore, as a major benefit to students, there's no software that needs to be downloaded and installed on your system. You access Oracle Live SQL through a web browser. So this makes it especially useful in an online learning environment. In this video, I'll highlight some of the key points to get you started. Oracle Live SQL provides access to Oracle Database 19C Enterprise Edition. At the time of the recording of this video, this is the latest version that's generally available to folks. It supports use of both SQL and PL SQL features. For example, you can enter one or more statements in what's called a SQL worksheet. You terminate each command with a semicolon or a slash. You can also use RDBMS output put line within PL SQL to send messages from within your code. Note that server output is automatically enabled for your session. For security and pragmatic reasons, there are some limitations on the account that is provided to you. I've given a couple of queries here that will assist you in assessing the available features for your account once you get on the system. By selecting the privileges from User SysPrivs, you see what system privileges are available to your account. Additionally, you'll find that you have a limited amount of storage available. I believe it's about 10 megabytes. You can query user TS quotas to find the exact amount. An important concept in dealing with this environment is something called a session. A session is considered to be a set of SQL and PL SQL statements that you've executed during your connection to Oracle Live. Important thing to note about a session is that a session uses a temporary schema. Each time you access Live SQL, you get a new schema. That is, you kind of start with a blank slate. So the session is initialized each time you log in or connect to Oracle Live SQL. You can save scripts, one or more commands that you've executed from a session, and replay the script in another session. Scripts can be files saved on your computer, or they can be saved in the Live SQL environment and associated with your username. Then when you log in again and create a new session, you have a history of what you've done in the past by looking at previous sessions. And those commands can be re-executed to kind of reestablish or restore an environment that you may have worked with during your last session or connection. You can also maintain the commands you execute on your own computer and then execute these commands when you establish a new session. Kind of like redoing whatever work you had done previously, you do it again to get back to the point from which you'd like to continue. Thus, if you're working on an exercise where you need to create tables, populate these tables, and write PL SQL code to access these tables, it's possible that during one session you are only able to create and populate the tables. Perhaps you ran out of time and then you've got to go do something else. You disconnect, you come back in, a brand new session is established, those tables don't exist. So what you can do is execute the same code that you had executed previously to create and populate, and then pick up from that point and work on your PL SQL code. So how do we get going? From a web browser, you'd enter livesql.oracle.com. Then a button appears in the middle of the screen called Start Coding Now. Click on that, and that will allow you to establish your connection and get things underway. An account is required to access Oracle Live SQL. If you don't already have an account, you can look at the bottom of the sign-in dialog, and below that, you'll see this question. Don't have an Oracle account? Create account. Click on this button. Then supply the requested information, receive acknowledgement via email, and then you're ready to access Oracle Live. That's a one-time deal. Once you create the account, the next time you go to Oracle Live, you can simply go right into the sign-in. Provide your username and password, click the sign-in button, and then you should be good to go. The image presented here is the first screen you'll see after you sign in. Notice there's a menu that appears to the left of the display, and the primary portion of your display is made up of the SQL worksheet, and below that, an output area. Every SQL statement or PL SQL statement that you submit for execution will be submitted in the upper portion of the SQL worksheet, and when you click the Run button, shown here in the upper right corner of the display, all of the commands within your worksheet will execute, and the output would be rendered down below in the SQL statement output section. If you have a bunch of commands and wish to execute only one of them, simply highlight that command. That is, kind of draw a picture to highlight all of that as if you were going to copy it and paste it somewhere else. With that one statement highlighted, you can then click the Run and it will execute only that statement. Otherwise, it will execute all statements within the worksheet. Within the SQL worksheet, you can enter SQL and PL SQL code to be run for this current session. Note that the database objects that you create in a session are added to your schema. If you select Schema from the menu on the left, you can see what objects currently exist within your schema. When you first connect to SQL Live, you have no objects. Even if the last time you had connected you created a couple of tables, there are currently no objects in your schema for this session. When the session ends, these objects go away. If you click on My Session, there are a couple of options here. Simply clicking on My Session will show you your current environment. If you click on the little down arrow next to My Session, a menu appears here. The first option is going to allow you to view previous sessions. This tool maintains a history of your activity. It doesn't maintain the objects you've created, but it retains the SQL and PL SQL code that you've submitted for execution. It also retains the result. If you had submitted a query, it will show you the output of the query. If you executed a command which had a syntax error or some kind of a privilege error, you'll see that error message in the session history. You can save the commands that you execute by creating a script, and we'll look at this in just a moment. But in the menu, you'll see an option here called My Scripts. If you click on that, you'll see a record of scripts that you have preserved or retained by saving. These are going to be associated with your username. When entering commands, there are some restrictions. If you click on the Run SQL button, this causes all of the statements in the SQL worksheet to be executed. Changes made by any DML statements that you've included within this session, or say within this SQL worksheet, will be automatically committed. It runs in an auto-commit mode. That's an important point to consider. So this limitation is due to the architecture that's used. There's a stateless architecture used within this Oracle Live SQL system. Also, the SQL plus describe command is not supported. However, you can view objects by going to your schema. You can also look at some of the metadata in the system catalog to examine objects. The entire catalog that you might be comfortable working with if you have Oracle installed on your own system is not going to be available. There are some restrictions on what you can access through the catalog that's provided here. But overall, this is a very nice system, especially for free. We've started our browser, and we've entered livesql.oracle.com. This is the screen that's displayed. We click on Start Coding Now, and it prompts us to log into the system to enter our username and password. We already have an account, so we'll provide that information. If you did not have an account, as mentioned previously, you would click the Create Account button down below. After signing in, the SQL worksheet is displayed. At the moment, I've not entered any commands. If I click on My Session, it will show me characteristics of my session in terms of which statements I've currently executed. I've not yet executed anything, and that's what's indicated by the messages here. I've not yet entered any SQL statements. I can go and look at previous sessions by clicking on the Previous Sessions option located under My Session. But first, let's examine schema. Because I've not taken any action yet, I have no objects in my schema. Let's go back to My Session. If I select Previous Sessions, I can see sessions that I've performed sometime in the past. Keep in mind that there's a limited amount of session history that can be retained, so don't rely on hitting the system hundreds of times and expecting each one of these sessions to exist the next time you go in. At some point, the older sessions will be purged. So it's a good idea to save anything important in your local file system. Let's go back to SQL Worksheet and try something out. Here I have a series of commands that I'm going to demonstrate. These commands are stored in a file on my local operating system. This is not part of Live SQL. So I've copied these to the clipboard. I now go to SQL Worksheet and I paste them in. We could enter commands one at a time, or as you see here, I'm entering a series of them. Even though the cursor appears on line 18, when I go to click the Run button, all of the commands will be executed. And we see if we review the output that's produced, we'll see statement processed, table created, row inserted. One by one, it's walking through all of these commands. I can scroll down in that area and examine what we have. The last command said, let's retrieve all of the data from the department table. And sure enough, we get the output of the query. Now, if I go to schema, I'll see that I have a table object. If I go back to the SQL worksheet, assuming that I would like to have this department table available to me in the future and populated with the data that I've inserted here, what I can do is go over to the upper right corner, and adjacent to Run is the Save button. And when I click on Save, it allows me to save all of the commands within this worksheet. So I could put any name that I wish. So I could say, for example, save department table. I give a description, create and insert statements for the department table. I click Save Session as Script, and a new script is created. Notice it brings me to my scripts, and here's the actual script that got created. It's called Save Department Table. The explanation is create and insert statements for the department table, and here are all of the commands. Now, I'm going to exit, so I'll log out. Live SQL has been terminated. The schema that I was using is gone. The user that I was using is gone. So now when I click Start Coding, it's a brand new session that I'm entering. I've connected. This is a brand new session. I click My Session. And the response is, I haven't done any work yet. I click Schema, and the response is, you have no objects. I can go to My Scripts, and I can click on Save Department Table. It brings back all of the commands in the script. None of these have been executed. So I can run the script, and it tells me success. 8 statements ran successfully, 2 objects were created. Do the alter session, the create table, there's object 1, a series of inserts, a commit, and a select. Here's a question for you. Where'd the second object come from? I only issued 1 create, but it reports that 2 objects were created. If you want to think about it, pause the video. Here's the answer. Because I designated DEPT as the primary key for the department table, the system will automatically create an index to enforce the requirement of uniqueness for that column. That's the second object. It was implicitly created. Anyway, what I've done is I've restored the environment. I click SQL Worksheet, and now the department table exists. I can go and query it, click Run, and there we go. If I go to Schema, there it is, the department table was created. That's the basic idea of how we can use this tool to work with a relational database and do SQL and PL SQL. We don't have to do it all at one sitting. We can create a table, remember that, come back at a later session, create it again, and move forward using it. Hopefully you found this to be useful. It provides a great alternative to installing the software on your own machine. This way, you have access to an Oracle database to play around with SQL and PL SQL, complete assignments, learn features of the database, and how these languages work.